Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, your host for today on our series on Envisaging a Digital Future, an exclusive fireside chat powered by Crayon software experts with our digital innovators. This is a recorded session and will be available on our website, which is cionews.co.in, and our CIO News LinkedIn handle. A quick brief about our presenting partner. Crayon helps customers build the commercial and technical foundation for a successful and secure digital transformation journey. Crayon provides guidance on the best solutions to organizations for their business needs and budget to thrive and innovate with software, cloud, AI, and big data. Let me dive in introducing our guest for today. He's Mr. Prasad Ramakrishnan, Chief Information Officer and Chief Information Security Officer at Freshworks. Prasad has more than 35 years of rich experience. He's an innovator in a cloud-first ecosystem who has successfully transitioned companies from a traditional IT architecture to an user experience enhanced cloud-only architecture. Ability to operate at C-level as a business partner with the board, other C-level executives, and third-party partners. Prasad has hands-on experience with managing core infrastructure, end-user services, cloud platforms, and SaaS applications. He has experience in defining and implementing compliance requirements for public and pre-IPO companies. Welcome, Prasad. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Khushbu. It's a pleasure to be part of this session.
Along with me today is Vikas, Bhonsle, the Chief Executive Officer and our moderator for this session. Vikas is the Chief Executive Officer at Crayon Software Experts. He has 20 years of progressive business experience with an expertise on sales, marketing, strategy, operations management in the field of IT. Welcome, Vikas.
Hey, thank you, Khushbu. And welcome, Prasad, to yet another episode of Digital Innovators in our series here. I'm really looking forward to a conversation today. Okay.
Thank you, Vikas.
Yeah. Before I even begin and dive into our session today, I would like to start with you talking a little bit about Freshworks. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there in the audience and our listeners who would want to know what Freshworks does.
Yeah, so Freshworks, we were founded in 2010. We are what I like to call as a born in the cloud company. And the key mission of Freshworks is to build a series of or a suite of customer and employee engagement products, which makes it easy for our customers to delight their customers. So think about it. If you look at the market space, it's very difficult to get customers. And what we provide is software to our customers so that they can then make it easy to manage the relationship that they have with their end customers. So it's customer and employee engagement platforms. Yeah, we have over 50,000 paying customers, and it's been a steadily growing customer base. And our customers are spread across around 120, 125 countries. So we have a pretty global adoption of our products.
Yeah. And I think the kind of footprint that you've been able to develop within a short period of time, operating so many geographies, is quite impressive. I was reading about Freshworks, and of course, there are various products that you offer, largely in the space of customer engagement and customer experience. Right? That space has been kind of disrupted in the last 18 months with COVID, and the paradigms of doing business have shifted, right? Because what was earlier normal has absolutely been disrupted in today's time. I'll be very keen to know, how has that impacted your business, your ability to give customer experience and the business impact?
Yeah, so like I mentioned during the introduction of what Freshworks is, right? We are a completely born in the cloud company, which means pretty much the infrastructure that you need to run our products is not in-house. It's all on the cloud, meaning all you need to have is access to the internet, and you have a secure way by which you can interact and play around with our products. As far as the IT, the internal story from a Freshworks perspective, right? We also got impacted by COVID, right? But one of the things which we did because was when we started seeing the early news about COVID. We have a strong BCP plan in place, but what we did is, as a management team, we exercised and flagged our BCP even well before many of the other companies or even the government started declaring it as a pandemic. So as early as in January and early February of 2020, we said, you know what, this is something that's going to likely become a major issue. Let's run a preparedness drill just to make sure that we are prepared for this pandemic if it becomes a pandemic, right? We did things such as, like I said, internet connectivity is the most important thing, right? So that's a single point of failure. So we went out and got internet dongles for all of our employees. We made sure that we run a sample set with different functions such as sales, marketing, IT, finance, and engineering, and told them, folks, assume that you're now working from home. Work from home. Tell us what is working, what is not working. So we could iron out all the possible issues that they would have. Is it connectivity issues? Is it the ability to continue doing their job? So because one of the things we are maniacal about is customer experience. And to us, my customer is my employees within the company, right? From an IT perspective, my customers are the employees working within Freshworks. So we wanted to make sure that their employee experience as it relates to the various things that they need to do on a day-to-day basis is not impacted. And then we learned some things through that, where one thing we realized is in the office, you have an ambient experience from a point of view of your telephone calls. You have a nice headset. But at home, you also have the other ambient noise that comes in. You have the noise of the TV, you have the noise of the dog, like you were mentioning, because my dog loves to bark anytime somebody rings the doorbell. How do you go about doing noise cancellation headphones, right? Because you want to make sure that you provide the technology to the employees so that they can continue to do their work. Then we realized that we need ergonomic desks for our employees. So the company, we gave an allowance to our employees to buy some of those, right? So it is a combination of technology and processes, as well as infrastructure tools that we deployed. All of this working seamlessly with the suite of products that we already have within our stack.
Impressive. And that brings me to a set of questions which I'm going to put together because they're kind of correlated and it doesn't make sense to ask them separately. So, the first thing that I wanted to ask you was, what kind of technologies help you provide the resilience to sail through this kind of an epidemic, so to say? I also happened to read today itself in the Economic Times that Freshworks is leading the charge in this recruitment of a permanent work from home kind of a workforce, right? And I'm sure, that kind of a model puts a very different kind of a pressure on you, especially when you look at it from a security standpoint, because now, the work is not only limited within the four walls of your office, it could be anywhere, right? So what provided the resilience, and what does this new permanent work from home model mean to you from a technology standpoint?
Excellent question, Vikas. And apart from being a company which was born in the cloud, if you take every aspect of the technology that we have deployed to our employees, it's also on the cloud. And by that, I mean, it's either something that's hosted on the cloud with one of the leading cloud providers, or more so, they're all SaaS applications, right? When you work with SaaS applications, you're putting the onus on the SaaS vendor, very similar to our customers when they buy our products. They put the onus on us to make sure that we have a secure operating environment. They put the onus on us to make sure that we have the right onboarding, offboarding, and other things, so that we can now keep the customer data secure. So what we have done is, in terms of the various end user services that our users consume, be it the help desk type of solutions, or the ERP, or the financial applications, or expense management, all of these are cloud-based applications. So like I said, the first thing we did was make sure that I ensure that there is connectivity. So we gave primary and secondary dongles in areas where there were not enough internet connectivity, right? Because it's not always reliable, especially when people work from home. When you're working in a metro area, the internet reliability is more as compared to when you work in a rural area or a suburban area, right? Where, especially in the villages, sometimes internet connectivity is not that reliable. Where what we would do is, for those employees, we would give them 2 internet dongles. We would give them a Reliance dongle as well as a Docomo, right? We would go with 2 different providers so that at least one of them would work. But from a point of view of building resiliency into the platform, one of the key aspects that we focused on is, see, when you're working in the office, if you have an issue, you just walk over from one floor to the other or walk over the aisle, go to the IT department and say, hey, my laptop is not working.
Absolutely.
Now, guess what? When you're working from home, the only place you can walk is from the kitchen to the bathroom to the bedroom and back to the kitchen and to the living room, right? And you don't have anybody, right? You get this feeling of what we call as loneliness when you're working from home, right? So one of the things we wanted to make sure that we made it easy for our employees was to eliminate the friction as it relates to contacting our support desk. And we use all of our products, all the products that we sell to our customers, we use all of them in-house, right? So we use Freshservice as our ITSM platform. And employees were able to contact and engage with our internal IT support technicians in a very friction-free environment using Freshservice. We exactly knew, and let's say Vikas, you recently had issues with your video coming on. We know what type of machine you have. We know what type of speed you have on your machine, right? We know all the things about the equipment that has been deployed to you, so that when somebody calls for service, we know the complete information about who you are, and we keep enhancing that information with each interaction that we have with you. All of which we store in our own Freshservice application. The second is technologies such as Zoom, technologies such as Slack, and other things, which makes it where we make it very easy for employees to say, hey, I want to ping somebody and ask them a quick question. What I did was I flattened what I call as my support desk, where I have people who do the hardware and technology support, as well as users who do the business application support. I flattened my help desk, so that from an end user perspective, it should not matter whom they contact within IT. Everybody within IT is an ambassador of IT, where they would pick up the issue and then hand it off internally to the right person, right? So that way, from an end user perspective, they don't feel like they're getting the runaround. We also put in technologies which enable us to do what we call as vendor spend management, because that's one of the hidden costs with all of these SaaS applications, right? Which enabled us to say, hey, we have a whole bunch of these SaaS applications, and people are using them, and some of them may not be using it or adopting the tools to the extent that they're using. So we started putting vendor spend management into place by doing SaaS application management, right? So this enabled us to see, are we getting the right software for our end users to use? Are they using it? Are they having trouble using it, right? One more technology we deployed was single sign-on, to make sure that, and we were actually in the middle of the rollout of our single sign-on mechanism. So from an end user perspective, logging in once and then being able to access all of the services without having to remember 15 passwords. Yeah. Because as with any service desk, the maximum number of tickets comes with password resets, and we wanted to eliminate that. So with single sign-on, we could eliminate that as well.
That's wonderful. And hence, I'm now going to shift the attention to something that you spoke about, right? That most of the software is SaaS. In a way, you practice what you preach, right? Everything that you're selling, you've been using yourself. You know, in the good old days, we used to say, eat your own dog food, kind of.
Yeah.
So you've been doing that. But now I want to shift our focus to the cloud, right? And, you know, I've spoken to a lot of technology leaders, and, you know, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag when you talk about cloud, right? So cloud gives you the agility, the scalability, the availability. But then there is also this jury out on whether it reduces cost or kind of increases the cost. Now, I did hear about you making a lot of provisions within your infrastructure to see how you can manage putting in tools. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about how do you really manage the whole cost paradigm on the cloud? Question number one. And a follow-up question to that is, what are the things that you consider, right, while moving to the cloud? What kind of workloads will get migrated? You know, what are the key success criteria?
Yeah. Again, I would say if you've seen the movie The Titanic, right? Yeah. And you would have seen, as it relates to a lot of IT and IT related spend, you'll see that entire iceberg being the picture when they talk about cloud and SaaS, right? What you see is only a tip of the iceberg. What you have is all the hidden costs. An IT infrastructure from a SaaS perspective that is not managed is going to give you the unintended results, right? Most companies, they think that, hey, I've now taken all my payload and moved it to the cloud. And what they won't realize is the type of services. So let's take the two scenarios here, where you have taken services that were on-prem services, which you have moved to either Azure or Google or Amazon. You end up with a lot of analysis when you're actually doing the initial migration, right? Where you say, hey, what is the type of server I want? What is the amount of storage I want? How many S3 buckets do I need? How many, what type of EC2 server do I need? Or do I need a small, extra large, or whatever, right? And you do all of the capacity planning when you start the deployment. But what you forget is that over time, you need to keep managing what your capacity is for you to make sure that you are using what you really are, you're only paying for what you're really using. So coming up with a program where you're constantly monitoring what is your usage on the cloud providers and making sure that you are optimizing the utilization so that you're getting the best out of it. And in some cases, the intent is not to reduce the spend. The intent is to provide peak performance for your employees. In some cases, you may be running in a medium instance where you may want to go to a large instance. In some cases, you're in large, but the capacity that you need is possibly only an extra small or a small, right? So it is about going up or down as the need may be, for which you need to invest in the people to be able to manage that and make sure that they're monitoring that. The second scenario is where you have now migrated to a SaaS workload, right? Where instead of having on-prem software or what I call traditional big box software, you're now using SaaS software. In the case of SaaS software, as with any contract that you buy, right, you end up buying a whole lot of licenses initially, and you lock in either a 1 year contract or a 2 year contract or a 3 year contract. Now, unless you have a way by which you see whether there is adoption on this tool, right? Where, take the example of Zoom. Zoom has two different license models. You have the basic and the pro, right? The basic is a free license. The pro is actually a paid license. Now, if you do not manage as to how many free users you have and how many paid users you have, you may be over provisioning the users, which is where the whole area of what I call SaaS application management comes in, right? Where you need to make sure that one, am I deploying the licenses and do I have the licenses? And two, how many of those licenses are actually being consumed, right? So this is a discipline that is emerging as a very important area from an ITSM perspective, where not only do you want to make sure that you're providing the service, but also make sure that you're looking at the adoption to make sure that people are adopting what has been deployed to them. Otherwise, you end up with a surprise cost at the end of the month or the end of the quarter, or having what I call a shelfware. The other aspect which we focus on in this area is whenever you buy a piece of software, Vikas, and I'm sure you've been in the industry 20 plus years, right? In the traditional big box, you would have long implementation cycles. You would have implementation cycles that goes on for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So you would buy, and I'm not dinging the vendor here, but you would buy Oracle or SAP, and the implementation cycles are complex. The whole value proposition that SaaS gave you is, hey, you're going to get a 90%, 80% pre-configured piece of software. You flip a few switches here and you're ready to use it. So one of the things we look for is whenever we buy a piece of software, how long does it take from a time to market perspective, from the time I bought it to the time it is usable by my end users? If that time to market is extremely high, then I've not really pivoted from a traditional big box to the cloud, right? All I've done is change the deployment model from a traditional on-prem model to more a cloud-based deployment, right? So what SaaS gives you is the ability to now control what functionality you're deploying in a fast, easy time to market, right? So the time to market is another key consideration that we look for. So these are the ways by which we manage the spend.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to also look at ROI. You made a very fascinating point on, the older, highly transactional based models that we used to use. We used to take months and months, as opposed to something which is on the fly, ready to go. If you're going to take the same amount of time, then it's really a bummer, right? You're really not going to take full value out of it. In my experience, also now that I talk to so many technology leaders, the discussion is shifting around how can you adopt, how can you make use of more, how can you optimize. So that's great. Let's talk a little deeper into technology, right? I think this whole pandemic has absolutely accelerated what we call digital transformation or digitalization of infrastructures and business models, right? You are born in the cloud company, and you deal extensively in customer experience, right? So would you like to spend a little bit of time with us explaining what kind of deep technologies have you implemented which are enhancing your ability to provide better experience to your customers?
See, one of the areas which, as a company, we are putting a lot of focus on is the area of AI and ML, right? There was a myth, or what I call as a misconception, saying that AI ML bots are going to rule the world and eliminate jobs, right? In fact, there was a very interesting debate that we had in one of our customer summits, right, where we brought a series of customers together and we openly talked about it. AI and ML is a way by which you can enhance the type of experience you're giving, not only for the end customer but also for your agents, right? So if you think about from a tool perspective, if I can make the agent, the sales agent, or the support agent, or the IT service agent more equipped with the information that they need to support their end customers, if I can reduce their time to get trained and get onboarded on the piece of software using AI and ML technology, I have made my sales rep or I have made my support rep that much more productive, which means when they are productive, the customers that they serve will be more happy. The customers that they serve will buy more from them, right? So it is about putting the power of AI ML back into the hands of the people that are using the tool and also the end users. From an end user perspective, being able to see conversational, being able to have conversations with an AI ML bot enables them to get instant gratification. Think about the millennial workforce. Every single person is born now almost with a smartphone, right? My daughter, when she first started using computers, when I gave her a laptop, the first thing she did was just swipe the screen, because that's all they're used to, right? They want instant gratification from the tools that they interact with. So we are spending a lot of time and money and investments in the AI ML area, which I'm also using in the IT area, right? And indirectly because I'm adopting my own products. The second area I would say is what is called robotic process automation. Right? This is where usage of tools where if a piece of work is being done, a repetitive piece of work is being done, and you can measure what that repetitive piece of work is, if I can eliminate the human intervention there and have a bot do that, an RPA bot do that, what it does is it enables the person who's doing the job to get away from the mundane and then get into the analytical type of work, which is what the workforce of today wants to do. They don't want to keep pushing paper, right? Those were the good old days. Now it is about what work can I do to enhance the value that I'm providing to the organization, where if I can eliminate all the manual work, you're now able to do that using RPA. The other thing which we also did, because was both from a product perspective and from an internal perspective, we started putting more focus on what we call actionable intelligence, right? And this is where the concept that I use is what I call metrics that matter. And you've seen the paradigm when people go about deploying BI and analytics. There is a bad tendency to say, you know what, I want 100 different metrics to measure the business. I want 200 different metrics to measure the business. In reality, you need 3. If you're trying to look at 100 different metrics, you're truly not making a difference. What really makes a difference is if you focus on the 2 or 3 things that really matter, you'll move the needle as far as your performance and the end user's performance. So we are doing that in our products, where from a product perspective, we provide those actionable intelligence, and we are also using it on the internal deployments, where we have got an environment using which users can get you can get the actionable intelligence that they need from our sales data, from our finance data, from our marketing data, and so on. And the last thing I would say from this aspect is what I call the notion of invisible apps, right? And this is a concept which I've been kind of championing from a deep technology perspective for some time, where as an end user, if I tell you, hey, you want to do something from an expense report perspective, go into the single sign-on panel and click on this application and then submit this. Or if you want to do a vacation request, go into your single sign-on, click on this application and do this. End users don't like that. When you're looking at a smartphone, you're actually going and typing a few words, and the appropriate application comes up. It asks you a few questions, and then you're interacting with that. We're trying to do the same thing internally, where as far as an end user is concerned, they want to submit an expense report. They want to get a virtual credit card. They want to get access to a particular application. So we are botifying the entire interaction, where through a series of automations that we have built, we are trying to change the way by which employees interact with the various applications that they use. So that's the other notion, which is invisible apps.
I mean, you know, it's absolutely fascinating, some of the things that you've spoken, right? And of course, I have one last question to ask you. And that question is kind of now just a summary of what we've spoken, right? I, of course, wanted to speak about what does hence having spoken about cloud and automation and RPA and enhancing internal processes, what's your vision of a digital transform organization, and what, according to you, are extremely important parameters? That's the last question for the day. Prasad.
All right. So because most people make the mistake of thinking that digital transformation is a project, right? Having done this for the last 3 decades now, right? Having been in IT and the technology area for the last 3 decades, one thing I would say is digital transformation is not a project, it's a journey, right? Where unless you keep re-innovating yourself, right? And re-innovating yourself not every 3 years or 5 years, but every quarter. Think about it. The plans you made in January of 2020 had to completely change by March of 2020 when the pandemic hit, right? The technology that you thought would work for you completely changed, right? For you to have a successful digital transformation, you need to look at adoption, right? You need to make sure that whatever you're putting from a digitization or digitalization, right, has been adopted. Because that goes back to, am I making investments in the core areas? And am I getting the value from the investments that I've made, right? You can come up with the world's best software or the world's best platforms, but if there is no adoption, then the battle is lost, right? The third aspect I would focus on is, are we setting up the people, the process, and technology? If you look at the trifecta that we call within IT, right? It's the people, process, and technology. Most people like to gravitate towards the technology. And I use the term, don't be a solution looking for a problem. Always figure out what problem you're trying to solve, align the people and the process to the right technology to solve that right problem, right? So from a digital transformation perspective, these are you're going to get a lot more success. You're going to make sure that you are making a difference and moving the needle, right? So these are a few of the things that I would focus on, right? Apart from all the things that you can go into the McKinsey studies and the other studies, you can get the standard keys to success. But from my experience, I would say these are few other things that I would add from a point of view of digital transformation. How do you make it successful within your organization?
Fascinating insights. You know, the thing that struck me is I had learned this word long time back in my career. It's relevant technology, right? Something that works internally for your customers, and that makes a big impact with an external customers and enhances the experience that they work with you. So fascinating conversing with you, Prasad. I loved the insight. I really wish you success and prosperity, and looking forward to meet you in person very soon. Thank you so much for this lovely chat.
Thank you so much, Vikas. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And thanks, Khushbu, for kicking it off here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Khushbu. Thanks, Prasad.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.